Before I begin this commentary, let me mention that I got interrupted a lot during it. I will reference this throughout the commentary, and I apologize in advance if you're trying to watch with me for any inconsistencies, any times when the video doesn't match the commentary or any other problems. I apologize in advance. The issues were out of my control. Sorry. That being said, I hope you enjoy this. Okay, let's begin the commentary. Hey guys, this is Alex Ramsey, host of Night of Batman. I'm here today to do Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. If you're watching it with me, go ahead and start it up as I say. So let's get this thing started right now. I love the classic Warner Brothers themed logo. A lot of the stuff I watched back then, like all the Batman cartoons and everything, had it. It brings back a lot of nostalgia on my part. Speaking of nostalgia, this is probably the movie that I've seen the most out of all of the DC animated universe movies. Not simply because it's like one of the best or one of the greatest. They just have this one on TV a lot, so I ended up catching it a lot more on TV. And as a kid, this was one of my favorites growing up. That was before, of course, I saw Mask of the Phantasm. I kind of have a weird sort of nostalgic battle going on with both of those movies. I know that technically Mask of the Phantasm is a better movie, but I still have a special place in my heart for this one. This one is very different from any of the other Batman movies. One reason is because of who Batman is in this. If you guys don't know, Terry McGinnis is Batman. It was established in the series that he was this kid. His dad got murdered because he was messing around with like this technology, and so he went after him, ran into Bruce Wayne, and from there the rest is history. Became Batman. Bruce Wayne is older in this continuity. It's in the distant future. We're never really given a date, but we know it's pretty far ahead. But everything still seems kind of familiar, like we could see ourselves kind of working some of this technology in a few years' time. And originally, when I first watched the show as a kid, I didn't like it as much. I was more into just Batman, and this to me wasn't Batman. I'm so glad that I gave this show a second chance, and also, I like this movie a lot because it has Joker in it, but just gave this show a second chance because it's a lot better. They have a lot of subtle references to the Batman show, and they try their best not to make it a clone of the Batman animated series, which I know on their part would have been just like an easy solution for them to do, and I admire them for making up their own villains for this. In the show, we really didn't get much of what happened to the past villains, because I'm sure they wanted this show to sort of stand on its own 2 feet, be its own thing, and be set in its own kind of universe, which is also great. But the few that we did hear from, of course, Joker in this. We also saw an episode about Bane and Mr. Freeze, but besides that, also Ra's al Ghul, but besides that, we didn't really get much of the other classic DC Comics villains, which I know must have been tempting for them to do. But I mean, if you're going to do a Joker, any Joker story in the future, since he's such a big villain, I'm glad they saved him for the movies instead of just making some short first season episode. I'm glad that they saved it and took the time to do this full-length movie about him. Michael Rosenbaum, the guy who plays the Scarecrow-like guy in this, also did other work. You may know him from from Smallville. He played Lex Luthor, and he was also Flash on the Justice League show. So that's just a little interesting tidbit. Some of the parts of this production were very rushed. They, especially the titles, which you're about to see in a few minutes, they kind of, I think originally, they didn't have like as much of a budget, say, as they did for Mask of the Phantasm, because This was a TV movie. This wasn't like Mask of the Phantasm that started out as a TV movie and then ended up becoming a theatrical feature. So they had to sort of be careful with their budget and sort of spend the money on what really mattered and the animation that really mattered. It was sort of like a very long TV episode. The animation is still good, don't get me wrong, but not up to the level it might have been if they had a bigger budget. I always wondered what this thing was. I'm sure they explain it later, but it's always kind of interested me, like what that thing is supposed to do, really, because I don't think they ever really explain it. Um, it just looks very sort of innocuous, like it could go to really anything. It might be like a some sort of computer device. I'm not really sure. Just like something I've been wondering about. Oh, that's gonna hurt. That kind of always, I never really thought about that, but him running straight into the side of that chimney or whatever it was, I know his suit's supposed to be powerful, but wouldn't that tear him up or at least break something? Wow, property destruction, but wouldn't that at least break something of his? I mean, he hit that thing pretty hard, unless it's just like all rusted up metal or something. Whatever, it's a cartoon. This came out kind of in the early 90s, early 2000s. This Batman, as you're going to find out, is very different from Bruce. He talks a lot more. He's very sarcastic. It's kind of got like a little bit of a Peter Parker Spider-Man thing going on. Will Friedle, if you don't know, I know him from Boy Meets World. I'm sure he's been in other things, but I was shocked to learn that he was in this and that he has such great dramatic range. Like, if you ever watch that show, he's a very comedic actor in that one. I would have never guessed he was really good at doing drama. I'm kind of bummed out that he hasn't got any more work since this show, because he really does, like, I wish they would bring him back for one of the Arkham games. I think that would be pretty cool to have like a Batman DLC thing going on. Just an idea, I guess. Yeah, again, like they had a very low budget for this title sequence, so they ended up just putting like white on black basically because they were so focused on getting all of the animation and everything done and looking good that they at the last minute like, oh, forgot to do the title sequence, we'll just throw something together in a few minutes, and just made it like on an editing software, I think like Movie Maker or something, really quick, and just threw it out. A lot of the people that are on this credit sequence have either gone to other shows. Like, I'm pretty sure Glenn Murakami has gone on to Beware the Batman. Don't quote me on that. Paul Dini, of course, did the Arkham games. And Bruce Timm is at the DC Direct videos now. So they've all gone on to do good things. Kurt Gita, I know, is on the new Beware the Batman show. He directed one of the episodes. I just did a vlog on. Now, with that shot right there, the fake Two-Face getting decapitated, this establishes something really big. This Batman's more bitter. Also, another thing it establishes, and another thing that was a big controversy at the time that this was released, was this was around the time of like the early 2000s, still in that sort of 90s censorship mode. A lot of parents were freaking out over this. There was a lot of controversy. I think they had like some sort of violent sort of regulations. They would censor down like the old Spider-Man cartoons like crazy, to the point of absurdity, because parents were terrified of letting their kids see maybe a little bit of blood. So they this is the original version that I'm watching, the unedited one. at the time this was released, they released the edited version with a certain scene that we're going to get to later taken out, and edited to a more, what I think is actually more gruesome than tame. But a lot more of the stuff that was in this was sort of taken out because I think either parent groups or something complained because there was some sort of big like anti-violence movement going on. But that was common for the time. They had a lot of, the FCC really cracked down a lot on especially cartoons during the 90s. The people that were behind this show and Batman the Animated Series had to fight to have actual guns in their show because back then they were only allowed to have laser guns because of imitatable violence and stuff like that, which is still a thing now, but it was just crazy back then. They'd have to have laser guns and stuff like that, and Bruce Timm had to say it's going to look ridiculous if they have walking around with laser guns back in this early 40s setting. It's going to look really dumb. So they eventually folded, but they had very strict sort of regulations about what could and could not be shown. They've kind of relaxed on those a little bit, especially on Cartoon Network. On Beware the Batman, there still are regulations, but they've allowed some of their shows to be like TV PG so they can get away with a little bit more. The censorship rules have sort of relaxed a little bit. They're not as strict and crazy as they used to be, which is a good thing because really the story's going to be better if the artists don't feel like they're censored or they're being held back by the FCC, in my personal opinion. They would go to like this dance club and be in these different dance settings a lot. That was just like a normal thing. Of course, Terry being a teenager and with his on and off again girlfriend, the normal conflicts you get with being a superhero and not having time for romance, that sort of thing. Again, very much like Peter Parker. I never found his girlfriend that interesting, though. We never really got to know her. She was very much just one-dimensional. This kind of bothered me a little bit. I still don't get why Joker's so fascinated with computer technology. But whatever, it plays in later to the plot of this movie. But still, Joker, I don't care how old he is, he's I guess maybe it has something to do with him being in I'm blanking on his name, the third Robin, Tim Drake. I guess it has something to do with him being in his body, that he's obsessed with technology. But Joker, even in the show, was very much chaos oriented. He's a lot more manic in the original animated series. And this one, they actually asked him to pull back a little bit. Bruce Timm, the creator of this movie, actually drew up a different version of the Joker because there was a lot of backlash from the sort of black-eyed Joker with the no red lipstick, so they redesigned him in this movie, kind of slicked back his hair a little bit, gave him that really streamlined sort of purple latex looking suit with the red sort of almost demonic looking eyes. At the time, Bruce Timm had just seen the Hannibal movie and made the Joker character a lot more quiet, gave him a much more long fingers, kind of like Frankenstein a little bit, actually. He's a lot more lanky at this point, I think, than he had been portrayed in any of the series, which is a lot more closer to his comic counterpart. He's also a lot more creepy in this one. There is still that comedic element, but he's a lot more quiet. Mark Hamill initially had a problem with that. He likes playing more manic characters and more wild characters, and he wanted to go back to the more wild, crazy Joker, but I think that if he had done that, the Joker it wouldn't work with the story. I think it is a lot more effective that the Joker is kind of this, not silent, but kind of quiet and creepy villain. I think it very much works with this. I think if Joker had been manic and sort of wild and crazy, it wouldn't have fit the tone. He would have come a lot across a lot more as sort of goofy than threatening. I like how I just noticed this. I like how the screen is pink. That kind of goes along with the whole Joker theme. I like how Bruce still very much puts up this facade, even though he's no longer Batman anymore. He's still very much. He's one way he acts in the cave, and then one way he acts when he's out in public. His voice changes, very much like the cadence of his voice changes. He talks much higher than he normally would. Um, Kevin Conroy talked in another one of the commentaries about how it's different doing different ages of any character, because it's very much like you have to change. There's a difference in, like, when you're playing a younger person, the words very much come out much quicker and you have a higher cadence to your voice. And when you're older, you talk much slower. You think more before you say stuff. And I can very much see that in this performance. I like how Bruce is just not taking this hyena character seriously at all, and just, and just smacks him. Ouch. I like how he very much, like, he doesn't care. Like, he's in his mind, he's still Batman. Like, he's still this tough guy, no matter how old he is. He doesn't need anyone's help. I also like this reveal right here. I really think this should have been the introduction to Joker. I think this would have been much more effective if you had not known anything, not had known that Joker was behind any of this. I do like the intro that he has before, but I think this one's much more effective. But you see this look on Bruce's face, like he is just like so shocked, like he would never have expected any of this. And I think it works a lot better. I'm kind of wishing it was the intro to this character. I like how Joker kind of makes fun of Batman's new costume, and also how his one of his sidekicks is a hyena, since he used to have two pet hyenas um, back when he in the younger days. Still don't know what that is. I think they explain it later. I'm just kind of blanking. It's been a little while since I've seen this movie, so forgive me if I don't remember. I still like how he's just shocked, like he's just seen a ghost. I like how he pushed that guy out of the way, even though he wasn't really even in his way. That's very much a Joker thing to do. I think they might have shown them setting up those bombs, but that's another thing I never really thought of that kind of bothers me now. It's kind of a plot hole. He really set up all those bombs like the day before or something, really, and no one saw this white-skinned guy just like casually walking around setting up bombs under tables, really? But I guess there's really no explanation for it. I never really thought about that before, but all of a sudden everything just explodes out of nowhere, and you never actually see him, or they never even really make reference to him ever setting up bombs there. I like the reverse Batmobile there too. Like how it's sort of a flipped upside down one. That's very cool, having that be his new limo that he drives around in. I like how they make fun of Captain America too on that line. See, this is very much like a TV movie. I never even noticed that how they fade out a lot to black screen. Still though, it holds up really well for like the animation looks really good now, even now. It holds up pretty well, even though it's something from the early 2000s. The story still holds up. I think this is one of the best Joker stories probably ever told, and that's a bold thing to say, but I think it earns it. This story is very complex, especially for a kids program. I like how Barbara Gordon in this, instead of being the Crystal Oracle, which they couldn't really do that storyline in, especially in early 2000s TV, that just wouldn't have worked. But how she's taken up her father's position, she's sort of become old and bitter, kind of like Bruce has a little bit. She's a little harder edged than she was before. She's sort of lost that youthful sort of spirit that she had too. She's very closed, and except for certain people. She's actually recast in this one. A different woman plays her. I'm not sure what her name is, but I know they had to do that a few times. She wasn't available for this movie. I'm blanking on the reason, though. I'm sorry. Seeing her character, though, like how she originally was in the series, you would never have guessed that she ended up becoming commissioner. Like, I would never have guessed that that would be the position she's taken. But it's kind of neat because it kind of creates a sort of Batman-Gordon relationship with a slightly different twist on it. She doesn't like Batman. She knows who he is. She doesn't like what they're doing. But she's just kind of accepted it after a while. This reminds me of Killing Joke very much. Batman sort of looking back at all the old Joker tapes and sort of just investigating. I like this little clip, how he compares it, because he's still not willing to accept it. He knows it's very much a Batman thing. He knows he's right. Batman very rarely admits that he's wrong, with good reason. I like how Terry isn't taking this guy seriously at all. He thinks he's just some stupid clown. He's judging him very much on appearances, which is actually what Joker does with him at first. He just judges him based off appearance. He thinks he's just some punk kid, which ultimately ends up being his undoing at the end. They sort of have like a paralleling sort of journey going on throughout the movie. I've never found out, like I looked at Terry's like pants. It looks like that he has like inside out pockets on. I never really figured out why, or if those were pockets or just like metal pieces like he has on his shoulders. I think those are metal pieces. I'm not sure. They're never really explained. I'd be interested if they ever did adapt this into any other form, like a video game or a movie, to see how what they made those into. I'm guessing they're metal pieces. It doesn't really matter. I like how Batman very much, how Terry very much separates himself from the past sidekicks. He's not a sidekick, he's Batman. And how he's not like any other ones he's had before. He's very much his own man. And how he's using this thing, like he says, to repay for things he's done. He used to not be one of the best kids. He used to might be someone that Batman wouldn't think a second about not knocking out and throwing in jail. It's very much a complex thing, again, to portray on the show someone looking for redemption after committing crimes. Having a great moment of change when they lose their father. It's deep stuff for a show like this. Is one of the things that made this show so great. They have actually adapted the Batman Beyond outfit into like the Arkham games. It's very interesting. I want to know if they'd ever do that in the animated, not animated, in live action, what that would look like. I'm guessing they'd probably use CG of some kind. They've done it in fan films and stuff, and it's had varying results. Sometimes it looks cool, sometimes it looks kind of weird. I think it works possibly a little better in this show with this style than it might in other shows, or like in the video game. In the video game, it kind of looks cool, it kind of doesn't. The face kind of looks kind of out of proportion and trying to put realistic features into that very stylized costume. This is actually what they're playing now in the club. It's actually a song that a band made, a heavy metal band. Hold on, I'll look at the name. Static X, that's it. Very much heavy metal band. I've never actually heard of them until now. The guy that did the guitars for some parts of this and more like rock and roll bits kind of he said something in the interview that he'd love his kids to watch this, to hear some of his music. I think that's very cool that they sort of went a different direction for this show. Again, they would never probably do that kind of thing in the animated series with just straight up like sort of heavy metal sounding techno guitars. I don't think that would have worked. It works very much in this series with how stylized it is and how futuristic and kind of weird looking it is with all the advanced technology and just the sort of future feeling it's got. I like how they have Ace, his old bat hand, with him, but they never actually call him that. It's just like his guard dog in this show, basically. Another little Silver Age thing. Again, the people that made this show are very much huge Batman fans. I actually think they do a lot better at Batman than they did at Superman. Nothing against the Superman animated series, but I thought they knew a lot more about this show. They were able to sort of put their own spin on everything. They adapted things from the comics, made an amalgam of different character traits from different interpretations of characters to make their own version of it, like how that smoke sort of makes Joker's face before he comes out of it. Just noticed that too. There's really subtle things in this movie that you have to watch it more than once in order to catch. I've seen this movie maybe about 5 times, and I just caught that. That's very creepy when he starts that sort of raspy laugh. Originally, when this was released, this was actually PG-13. When I got it recently, it wasn't rated because I guess they calmed down on censorship a little bit. But back then, again, people were a lot more sensitive to stuff like this. And to be fair, they did kind of push boundaries a little bit. I couldn't see them ever getting away with something like this in the TV show. Just like Mask of the Phantasm, they were sort of given more free reign to sort of do what they want with less restrictions. Which I like. I kind of wish they would have had less restrictions in the animated series. But that being said, I think they still did really well with the sort of things they had with the FCC. It occurred to me I haven't talked yet about how this show actually got started. So Batman Beyond originally was made out of an effort of 2 things. One was the New Adventures of Batman was doing good, but the studio execs there wanted Batman to be more hip. They weren't losing viewership, they just wanted it to be more accessible to kids. So they said, we love what you're doing, but we want you to do something more kid accessible. And then someone said Teenage Batman. Bruce Timm and Paul Dini very much were not on board with that idea at first. They were originally saying they were going to quit, and then one of them started coming up with an idea about maybe a future where there was still a Bruce Wayne, but maybe there was a Teenage Batman too. it went through a lot of different titles. It went through like the title Batman Tomorrow, the Tomorrow Night, and eventually they settled on Batman Beyond, which they thought had a nice ring to it. Ultimately, I think what started out as something they didn't want to do, considering all that, this turned out to be a really great show and a very different show. I don't think we've had anything like this since then, with all the other Batman related things. This is very much a different thing. It's kind of like an Elseworld story a little bit. Some of the stuff in this, like kind of informs some of the episodes they did later on with the Justice League. They kind of planted seeds for what would become the Batman Beyond universe later on. I like how he has a phone set up in his helmet. That's really cool. That's a really funny line. Because he's no longer Batman. He's not going anywhere. Also, he spends most of his time in a cave anyway, which is very sad when you think about it. I mean, with the sort of path that he chose, I could see why he would end up like that, very much alone and only with himself, a bitter old man. His journey really didn't get him anywhere. The city's still pretty messed up. This is a very personal attack. The Joker, on this show at least up until this point, had never done anything like this. He'd spread laughing gas around the city, but he never actually went out of his way to attack Bruce Wayne because he didn't know he was Batman. But this is a very personal attack. It's also very creepy seeing that too. Oh my goodness, that is freaky. But seeing the red ha-has on there, they actually had them change that in the edited version because it looked like that he wrote that in his blood. It's very creepy still hearing Kevin Conroy laugh that old sort of raspy laugh. It kind of freaked me out as a kid, to be honest. A lot of things in this movie freaked me out. I was scared of my own shadow as a child, so this movie freaked me out a lot. Because I, of course, saw the unedited version before I saw the edited version, so messed me up pretty much, just like anything else, but I guess it's good for you because it seems like a lot of stuff out of the 90s was really freaky, especially stuff from this show. This is very cool. I was kind of confused when I was watching the show. They kind of discussed how that might be confusing for people to all of a sudden see Looney Tunes on there, but it's kind of humorous and kind of sad in a way that Ace would be watching this. That's messed up. When I was younger, I did not. I thought these guys were newscasters. I could never really decide. They're actually computer generated newscasters. This guy that's being set up right there is it's sort of a red herring. They even had Mark Hamill voice him, sort of play up the mystery of who is the Joker. Is the Joker being is someone else being a copycat to the Joker? Or is it really the Joker that's back? That's sort of the whole thing that this movie is playing up. I like how they very much keep quiet until now, like how the Joker died or what happened to him. Which makes sense once you hear the story, because it's very much sort of like a Batman family, and as much as Terry wanted to be part of the Bat family, he never really was. He was sort of like his own thing. He was Batman. a new Batman, a different Batman, but not one of the sidekicks, so he really never could be part of that, no matter how much he wanted to. I like this flashback, seeing the old Tim Drake design, seeing the old Gotham City for like the last time from this show. This Tim Drake was actually an amalgamation of Jason Todd and the Tim Drake from the comics. Tim Drake from the comics was very much intelligent before he was a fighter. He was much more of a detective than anything. This one was very much a fighter too, kind of like Jason Todd a little bit. I know they could never probably ever do Jason Todd in any sort of continuity back then because of what ultimately had to happen to him. And knowing the Bruce Timm team, they would have to do that story at some point. I like how they have hookers in this one. Again, very much edgy. It's kind of subtle though. You wouldn't really make that connection unless you're older. I like how this is very much, there's no jokes in this, it's very quiet. There's really no sort of, it's very much haunting and kind of creepy. And they kind of hold that atmosphere very much without trying to soften it up, trying to sugarcoat it like they might if it was the animated show. If this was, I know that certain scenes they'd have to really pull back. This scene right here is pretty much what divided a lot of people, what caused the controversy back then, and what ultimately stuff had to be cut. Now this is very creepy. Again, heavy on the atmosphere here, no jokes. This is the darkest I think we've ever seen the Joker, and the most creepy. In the show, we did have creepy moments where he'd use laughing gas, but that was the most. He never approached levels of this bad of like just being utterly just like creepy and scary. At this point, this was the most disturbing Joker portrayed on the screen. Now later on, it would be Heath Ledger, but at this point, this was the closest to comic Joker that we had gotten. I think what he ultimately does to Tim Drake is actually creepier than killing him when you think about it. And also much more cruel. It's a much more personal attack. It's very much Killing Joker going after someone from the Bat family instead of just going after Batman. He never really had done anything like this in the show. He'd just go after either the mayor or just people, again, pushing people out of the way that aren't in the way, but he'd just go after like the mayor or some innocent bystander, never somebody that meant something to him. This is very much like a violation of, on multiple levels, of just like Batman's world. Joker did something personal, something awful. I like how he's just nonchalantly, like he doesn't care. He treats it as a joke, like oh, he's just part of our family now. Again, this has sort of become a sort of thing with Joker in the comics, going after family members ever since the Killing Joke. That's kind of been his thing. He killed Jason Todd. He went after Barbara, crippled her, and tried to drive Jim Gordon insane. Alan Moore kind of also, I'm not sure if Death of the Family or The Killing Joke was first, but around the 80s he's just started, that is still freaky, but he just started sort of attacking Batman more personally, trying to get at his heart, trying to severely hurt him, not just like physically, but emotionally. And of course the Joker thinks it's hilarious that he's broken this kid's mind and made him like him. The ultimate thing, like the worst thing you could possibly do to Batman is turn one of his sidekicks into a reflection of his worst enemy. This is creepy. Actually, Andre Romano did the laughs for the Joker in this, and it freaked me out as a kid. Again, it's still kind of creepy now. I can see why they had a lot of issues with this movie. I'm surprised they didn't cut out more with the Joker. I mean, his death scene, don't get me wrong, is pretty gruesome for a kid's show, especially around now, but just this whole scene is like the worst part of this movie. The rest is kind of creepy too. There's a lot of deranged moments in this, but this is the worst it gets. Harley very much went from sort of just like a casual sidekick in this to very much involved. Like, she really is as crazy as he is. She did something terrible. Before, she was just sort of along with the ride with the Joker, but she did something wrong, like Batgirl is saying. And see how crazy she really is. That she doesn't feel any remorse for basically destroying this kid. And that she might even be crazier than the Joker. Or just as. And see how really ugly she is on the inside. That maybe maybe the Joker didn't twist her as much as she was just allowed to have her other side show, pretty much, like the Joker's all about, saying that people really like him on the inside, they just refuse to show it because of society's rules. So maybe she really was like this all along, because a normal person, even if they were twisted just a little bit, would never go along with this if they weren't sick somehow on the inside before. I think she's more like the Joker than she likes to admit. I think what he did to him is much worse than if he had just killed him. I think if he had just killed him, it would have been a lot more tame than what he ultimately did, was just like stripping away. This freaked me out too. They lightened it up a little bit, but still the whole peeling back the layers of his mind, finding out his Batman's true secret identity. And also just how sick this is. I mean, the crowbar, killing Jason Todd with the crowbar was tame compared to what he ultimately did with this, electrocuting him until the point where he basically started just peeling away his mind until he wasn't himself anymore. He was a monster like him. I don't think Joker would ever do anything like this. I don't think if he had the option that he would ever really want to know Batman's secret identity, because I don't think he would care. And this has been shown in like other Snyder-related things. I much more agree with that like he doesn't really want to know who Batman is, because that ruins the fun. This one's very different. He kind of wants to know, and when he does find out, he's disappointed that he's, again, blood, so they wouldn't be able to get away with that in the animated series, or very rarely. They sometimes get away with it. I like how he has sharper teeth in this too. It's very much like he's more of an animal than he is a person. This one is a little bit closer to how he was in the animated series, but yeah, peeling back his mind, doing all this stuff to him, is much worse than just killing Robin and then blowing him up. This permanently messes this kid up. Makes him the thing that he hates, pretty much. Again, this Joker's different. He actually wants to kill Batman. Most edgy Joker we've probably seen up to this point, because before, like, we kind of saw that kind of edgy side to him, but he was never actually killed or never actually encouraged killing. Like, we'd sort of get it through innuendo, stuff like that. Again, this scene right here is why, like, they had this big controversy over violence. We never actually had seen a character die on screen besides Mask of the Phantasm, which was PG, but on TV it was either implied or not shown at all. Like, they would just say, oh, so and so is no longer with us or something. Death was never really addressed in the 90s shows back then. This Joker is very much closer to how he is in the animated series with his costume and hair design and everything. The other version had like a different ending, like he ended up dying anyway, getting electrocuted to death. I think that's much worse because it's prolonged. At least this one, he died immediately. That other one, even though they didn't show much, was like much more him falling by his own hand. But this is actually a lot worse too, now that I think about it, that Tim Drake has to live with, even though he wasn't himself, actually murdering someone, breaking the code that his sort of father figure had established that you never do. That he had been twisted and caught and twisted into something he wasn't, and done the one thing that Batman made him swore he would never do. I could see how it very much would break somebody. Again, Batman did quit in the show too, but it was for different reasons, like he had a heart attack, but this one sort of gives a more valid reason too why he would quit. I think maybe that might negate what happened in the first episode. He still carried on as Batman, but he didn't let the sidekicks be in it. This is very much like the one of the final nails in the coffin for Batman's career, though. This made him sort of wake up and realize, hey, I'm endangering people's lives. They don't need to be in this. And then Joker coming back, I'm sure all those old wounds were reopened, and he remembered, what am I doing? Why am I letting Terry endanger himself? I will not let the same thing happen to him. That's why he ultimately ended up rejecting him and saying you have to leave. Because if he had told him the truth, he might put him in danger, because Terry might try and go after the Joker himself, which he also ends up doing. I like how all the characters in the show, like, even though Tim sort of has a happy ending, they all are kind of bitter, like, about Bruce. They don't really, it's not like they hate him, they just aren't on the best speaking terms with him. He seems like he's rejected people as he's gotten older, that he's very much sort of like a shut-in, except for when he's out in the public eye. Which is kind of like in The Dark Knight Returns and also in Dark Knight Rises. Sort of like the idea that once he aged, that he kind of cut himself off from everybody, all of his former friends, which is really sad, and that they would sort of reject him. They're sort of playing on that idea a little bit in Death of the Family, after, which also involves Joker doing something and then that dividing the whole family afterwards. I like how Batman disappears after that. That's very much a Batman trope that he does. I'd like to see them do something like this, like having the inside of it be lit red, like it is in this. Like, I'd like to see them either do that in one of the games or in the movie that's coming out. I think that's a very cool design. It's very stylized, which is really cool. And you don't really see it much in any of the other ones. Whenever you see the inside of the Batmobile and other shows, it's either just like very much like an advanced looking car, or just an advanced looking car on the inside, pretty basic. Like, you don't really see kind of stuff like that on there. That tie looks more like he's like a reverend or something. Random thought, sorry. Like how Michael Rosenbaum was doing a Christopher Walken impression at one point, and he's a very funny guy actually. Like, you wouldn't guess it from all the characters he's played. Like, he plays very serious characters sometimes. Most of what I've seen him in, besides with the one exception being the Flash, but he's actually pretty funny if you hear any commentaries or interviews with him. So he's doing this walking impersonation. They said we gotta have him for one of the villains in one of our future things, so they decided to make him the Scarecrow character in this. The design for the fat clown in this was actually based off of one of um, either Bruce Timm's or one of the producer's friends. That one day dressed up as like Sicko the Clown, and had a very costume very similar to this. I think that's kind of cool. One thing I always wondered is why they never had Bruce Timm or any of the other writers for this show making the movies. Like Paul Dini, somebody could make a great Batman movie or one of the DC animated movies. I got nothing against trying to remember the guy that made the last Man of Steel movie is blanking on his name. I forget, but really, instead of getting like the movie writers for like the previous Nolan movies, get somebody like Paul Dini. I mean, he'd be great for one of the movies, especially after seeing Arkham City, which, even though it's a video game, feels very much like it could be a movie if it wasn't. It opens up very much like a movie. In fact, I don't know why they would ever not do that. In any mystery, usually you eliminate one of the red herrings before the story's over, so that you have less to suspect. I like how he just casually salutes that guy and then leaves. Salutes Batman and leaves. One thing that I kind of thought of now is during all this attacks, like these attacks by satellites and everything, where's the government? Why aren't they fighting against the Joker, trying to find him and destroy? It seems like something Cadmus would be all over right now, but I think at this point they might have disbanded. Because I think Amanda Waller by this point is retired. But again, like Meyer nitpicks, so. This was also another thing they did in the series and also in this movie, is the choice to not have music in the Batcave of any kind, like dramatic music, stuff like that. It's very effective. It kind of gives you a sort of quiet, um, sort of solitary feeling like Batman must feel every time he goes down there. This is another crucial clue to the plot, like that he went out of his way to destroy the Robin costume. Also the fact that Robin would end up being the future Joker. Again, I'm sorry, I forgot that this was set up, that um those seemingly unimportant parts put together could be a lethal weapon. It's kind of cool. The Bat family really doesn't have a happy future when you think about it. Barbara's a bitter old woman that's a commissioner, but also has a love interest, but still is not on speaking terms with Batman, or very rarely does speak to him. Tim Drake doesn't speak to Batman, if very much not at all. Ever since that incident, their relationship has been very strained. And Bruce is a bitter old man that spends most of the time in the Batcave, so his life is going great right now. I like how he has like this very stereotypical lab coat. It's like something from the 50s. I like how the stuff in there is green and purple. I mean, that might have been an unintentional thing, but still, it's kind of cool that that even in that lab, that there's like subtle sort of visual cues to the Joker. Paul Dini actually wrote this story. Big surprise. Usually, with some of the best animated episodes or movies from this show or anything are written by Paul Dini. He's an amazing writer. He really knows how to write the Joker and superheroes in general. He can. The interesting thing is he's very good at both drama and comedy. I think he does both very well. He's a very balanced writer. He's actually a really good drawer, also, which is awesome. I like how I kind of wish parts of this movie would have been a little bit longer. I know that they're under. That's my same complaint with the DC Direct movies. That I wish there would have been a little bit more time to flesh out this mystery. I mean, it works with the time that they're given with this, but I think like maybe a few more scenes devoted to like the mystery of the Joker's identity, maybe a little bit more with the red herring, Jordan Price, other things like that might have helped make this a more, not that it's not a solid story, but make it a little bit more layered, possibly. It works very well with what we're given, but again, that's just a minor complaint, and that's just me enjoying the story enough and wanting to see more. This is very much like a Joker thing too, having old abandoned places being either toy, like old abandoned toy factories or old abandoned candy factories. Wow, Tim Drake is really good at hacking stuff if he knows how to hack into some of the bat tech, because that stuff has got to be like super complex. Also, Papa Spank is one of the lines that Batman used when referring to Catwoman in one of the early issues, like sort of scolding her after she had was trying to get away from him. I'm sure that was intentional because I think I remember an interview somewhere saying something like that. Goodness, the property damage. Again, I'd like to apologize for any sudden jumps or any dramatic edits in this. I'll address this at the beginning of the video once I've finished recording this, but I keep getting interrupted by just different things. It's like the different things going on today, so I apologize in advance for either any inconsistencies with the video that's playing, if mine's not exactly synced up to what you're watching. If you are watching it with me, my apologies in advance. I like how this always fascinated me about the Batmobile, the sort of jet that comes out the back. It doesn't make any logical sense. Like, it's just sort of there to look cool. I mean, he does occasionally use it to go faster, like he does in Batman Begins. I'm talking about Batman, of course, but like it's just sort of one of those things that's there to look cool. Originally, when Batman was first getting started, the Batmobile didn't come on too much later. Like, he originally lived in New York instead of Gotham. Gotham was very much something that was made up later. He drove around in just like this very normal car, and slowly it started to turn into this more fantastical thing around the time of the Silver Age. And the introduction of Robin, it very much became this very cool car. It was originally just nothing special. The evolution of that car has always fascinated me. I like how Ace gets to sort of have his moment, again being Ace the Bat Hound. We never really see him fight or get into any of those scuffles with villains until now. I like high-tech Batman turning invisible. That's something the old Batman did, but in a different way. invisibility is a very tricky thing to do in like any medium and make it look good, especially in animation. I like how the all of the Joker villains are undone by things that they would normally employ to kind of mess up Batman. It's very cool that he's sort of giving them a taste of their own medicine and sort of learning how to play on their level. This final confrontation is one of the things that makes the movie for me a little bit. If this wasn't included in it, this whole speech about him being his own Batman, not the Batman that he remembered, but it's sort of his own thing, it wouldn't have been as good. This very much basically sums up the whole theme that's been going on through this whole thing. I like how he finds Tim Drake in this and not Joker, but something's very wrong here, and you can tell. I like how his hair is very much sort of reminiscent of the Joker's original hairstyle. That's sort of a little bit of subtleness that you don't really pick up on the first time. Again, watching it a few times, like Mask of the Phantasm, you pick up on new things every time. Good movies do that. They're layered. I like how he sort of repressed this thing, very much like most people that have gone through a trauma do. They sort of repress the trauma and try and put it away like it never happened. And how like they sort of repressing it and pushing it down can kind of lead to more psychological problems. I like how that reveal right there, that Joker is the one really talking right there, and then it's no longer Tim talking. I like this transformation. It's very creepy. Again, they were allowed to get away with a lot more in the 90s and then the early 2000s than a lot of other networks were allowed to get away with. You never see something like this on Fox. That's a great animation when he transforms. I like the reveal that he's really wearing that purple jumpsuit under there. Again, this never seems like something the Joker would ever do, but it's a good conceit for the whole story to work. Like never, I don't ever see Joker thinking about the future and being like, I might not always be around. I need to put my own subconscious into this chip so that I'm able to be around years later. I like that the microchip is also a smiley face. That's something very Joker. This is sadistic. This kind of raises questions though, like if his subconscious is there, is that really him or just like programming of him that was put in later on? I also like how that rocket is that thing that is just sitting there in the background ends up being one of the things that he uses to destroy the city. I love the piano piece in here. It's very cool and effective. Again, the music on this show was top notch. Shirley Walker, who did the music, was the assistant, I think, for Danny Elfman. Did the music both for this and for the animated series, of course. Which I think a lot of shows didn't have this luxury of having an orchestra for a show. I think it very much helps the atmosphere that this was something different, something special that we haven't really got up to this point. We've gotten close with other shows, but it's never really been topped, like the level of care that was put into this show and these movies. I like how the targets are made into a big smiley face. I like how he uses Ace as a sidekick again. Ace's getting a lot of action in this movie. Most of the time just sitting around at Wayne Manor. Again, sorry in advance. Again, if this becomes inconsistent, I had to stop again because of another issue or something. I'm going to try and edit this together and keep it as close as possible to being coherent so you guys can watch it and it sync up alright. But again, I'm sorry if there's any problems and you guys can't watch it exactly along with me. And again, it's out of my control. I like how Batman very much is, or Terry very much is not Bruce Wayne. He hasn't had everything. Sort of, he's not the detective as much. He is sort of got the detective in him, but he's not, has every step set out. He's very much young. He's thinking on his feet, sort of setting things up as he goes, and sort of seeing how they go. Batman would never make a mistake like this, but he very much turns it in his favor, like Batman would. I like how both of them are underestimating each other, especially him calling him a punk and saying he's not the real Batman. I love that line. I also like how the little lighting effect going on both of them. They have that sleek latex thing going on. One is gray and one is purple. It's kind of cool. It's sort of like sort of cool thing, like Joker very much is wearing stuff that would be also something Batman would never do, fight dirty. Terry's very much coming into his own in these scenes and very much facing the Joker quite differently than the original Bruce Wayne Batman would have, which is great. I like when writers and artists do that and show that maybe the guy that took up the mantle might not do it the same exact way, instead of doing it like the cookie cutter way, like, oh, because Batman does it this way, that means so-and-so would do it this way. I think it's more realistic. I think it also shows that they're their own person. I like how he's very much sort of playing up the whole vain element of him, sort of talking him into a fight, talking to him until like he's about to lose it, and sort of making fun of him, which something Batman never did. Batman was always silent. He never stooped to Joker's level, never actually made fun of him and how he wasn't funny, and attacked him on a psychological level. Batman would just beat him up and be done with them. Terry likes to mess with him, sort of push his buttons, see how far he can push him until he's no longer thinking straight. Also like seeing him laugh at him. That was the moment he came into his own as Batman. Again, he's not one of the sidekicks. He is Batman, a very different Batman, but still Batman all the same. This very much proved him, like he earned his stripes in this one, facing the Joker, one of Batman's toughest foes. I love this part too. He just starts choking him like that. I like how he sort of has stuff like he had that planned out. He's making stuff up as he goes, but he sort of has a very loose plan, like a framework going on here, and with Bruce helping him out too, but him sort of making up the steps as he goes, and ultimately defeating the Joker at the end in his own way, which I think was very important that he defeat him and not Bruce as much. That he prove himself and that he's not just a sidekick, he's more. He's Batman. They love to cut it close in movies, I've noticed. Really great explosion effects. Me, myself, being an artist, I really struggled drawing those. Kind of jealous. That still kind of bothers me. The Joker would be obsessed with technology, I guess, because Tim Drake, like, he's in his body, but still. But this doesn't seem like something Joker would be fascinated in. He seems very much like a death and destruction kind of guy before a technology, oh, let's blow stuff up with a sophisticated bomb kind of guy. But I guess you could chalk that up to age. It works within the story, all right. Also, this Joker's very different from any of the other ones before. Some people like this scene, some people don't. Paul Dini, who wrote this, fought with Bruce Timm over whether or not they should include um, a grandmother version of Harley to show that she survived. And it's kind of neat that the two villains end up being related to the Joker's former henchwoman. I like how at the end they're finally patching up the family relationship after this ordeal. There are some happy endings in Gotham. I like how Batman is very much characteristically portrayed like he is in the movies and books, like a very sort of emotionally, like he doesn't know how to express his emotions. He didn't have a mother figure, so he very much struggles with issues like that. Like he very much likes to solve issues with his fists before he will try and attack any emotional relationships. He's very bad with the relationships. He lost his family at an early age, which sort of crippled that kind of area of his life. And I like how in this one he's finally trying to patch it up with his former family, and how ultimately Terry isn't included, which makes sense, and it's also kind of sweet in a way, because he is Batman in his own way, and he's something different entirely. I love this ending. They did this in Mask of the Phantasm too. I think it's always awesome whenever you have Batman suit up at the end, with the different looking Gotham City too. So that is the end of the movie. I hope you guys enjoyed me yapping over this movie. I know I probably didn't have as much to say during this one as I did maybe in the other commentaries I've done. I actually attempted this commentary once before this, and this one actually I think came out a little bit better. Although we'll see in editing if the final product is actually as good as I think it will be. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I guess like, subscribe, comment. I really want to know if you guys want me to keep doing these because these seem to be popular. I'm not sure what I would do next. Maybe a Batman Forever kind of thing. I am still watching one of the Beware the Batman episodes. I will get to doing one of the Bat Logs a little bit later. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this. And one of my next reviews, I am actually going to go back to using the old credits that I used to, like the old opening intro, because I feel like that gives it a much more polished feel, have more of the pictures involved instead of me just talking in front of the screen. As much as that is easier, I think it looks a lot better when I edit it together. I think it gives a much more professional look than me just sitting there talking in front of the camera. So that's about it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this commentary and what I had to say about it. I guess comment below, and I'd like to hear what you think about it. If you have any interesting experiences with this movie and what you thought of just this commentary and just my videos so far. If you have any suggestions to make these better, if any of you out there actually want to be on one of these commentaries, I'd love to have you on. Just message me. And also for the fan film I got sent, I am going to get on that eventually. In fact, that might be the next review I do. So stick tight for that. Okay.